Read aloud in a warm and friendly tone. She's not dead. A homeless black man interrupts the funeral of a billionaire to save her. What happened next shocked everyone. Stop. She's not dead. The cry cut through the solemn air of the cemetery like thunder, causing hundreds of heads to turn simultaneously. The pastor froze with the Bible in his hands. The gravedigger stopped lowering the golden coffin, and a shocked silence fell over the funeral of Victoria Sterling, the billionaire who controlled half of the real estate ventures on the East Coast. At the back of the mourning crowd, a black man of about 45 was making his way through the city's elite. His unkempt beard, torn clothes, and worn backpack contrasted sharply with the Italian suits and designer dresses around him. People moved away from him as if he were radioactive. Security shouted William Sterling, Victoria's widower, his face contorted with rage. Get this madman out of here immediately. But the man continued to advance with a determination that made even the guards hesitate. His eyes burned with an intensity that revealed something beyond apparent madness, an absolute certainty that chilled the blood of those closest to him. My name is David Washington, he said, his voice echoing across the cemetery. And I saw you two planning this last night in the hospital parking lot. Dr. Peterson, the Sterling family doctor for 15 years, turned visibly pale. William felt his legs buckle, but he tried to maintain his composure in front of the TV cameras broadcasting the funeral live. Victoria was poisoned with a substance that simulates death. David continued, ignoring the growing murmurs from the crowd. She's alive, but you want to bury her before anyone finds out. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Some reached for their cell phones to record. Others recoiled in horror. David walked over to the open casket, his eyes filling with tears as he saw Victoria's pale face. Please, he pleaded, turning to Victoria's aunt, Mrs. Henderson, who was in the front row. Let me show you that she's still breathing. William lunged forward furiously. This bum is making up lies. Victoria died of natural causes. Then why are you sweating so much? David asked calmly, taking a small glass vial from his backpack. And why can't Dr. Peterson look me in the eye? At that moment, David Washington, who had been sleeping on the streets for 3 years after losing everything in a corrupt court case, displayed a serenity that only exists in those who have weathered much worse storms. There, in front of all the contemptuous stares, he stood firm, like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the right time. If this story of conspiracy and courage has piqued your curiosity, get ready to discover how a man society had discarded became the only hope between life and death for one of the most powerful women in the country. The crowd at the cemetery divided into two distinct groups. Those who frantically filmed with their cell phones and those who recoiled in horror at the surreal scene. TV cameras continued to broadcast live, turning what should have been a private funeral into a national spectacle. This man is clearly disturbed, William declared to the cameras, his voice trembling with controlled indignation. My wife died after a long battle with a rare disease. It is outrageous that a drug-addled vagrant should interrupt our mourning with delusional fantasies. Dr. Peterson adjusted his glasses nervously, forcing a professional smile. As the doctor responsible for the case, I can categorically state that Mrs. Sterling passed away yesterday at 11:47 p.m. I performed all the necessary tests. David watched the two men with disturbing calm, as if he were watching a poorly rehearsed play. His right hand remained firmly on the small vial, while his left hand discreetly fumbled in his worn backpack. Interesting, doctor, David said, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. Because in the hospital parking lot, you said exactly this. The dose you gave her will last exactly 18 hours. After that, she'll wake up and we'll be screwed. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Peterson visibly paled, his hands trembling as he adjusted the stethoscope around his neck. Lies, William exploded, but his voice sounded less convincing this time. Security, remove this deranged individual immediately. But as the security guards approached, Aunt Henderson raised her hand, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. Wait. If there's even the slightest chance my niece is alive, we need to investigate. David seized the moment and turned to the crowd. 3 years ago, I was David Washington, a software engineer at Sterling Tech Solutions, a subsidiary of Victoria's company. I worked there for 15 years until I discovered that William was embezzling company funds. A murmur of shock swept through the crowd. The camera zoomed in, capturing every word. When I tried to report the irregularity to Victoria, William set me up. He planted false evidence that I was stealing, criminally prosecuted me, and destroyed my reputation. I lost my job, my home, my family. For 3 years, I lived on the streets while he enjoyed the fortune he stole. William took a step back, his face alternating between anger and panic. That's absurd. This man is a convicted criminal trying to get revenge. I am a convicted criminal, David agreed calmly, taking an old smartphone out of his backpack. That's why no one suspects anything when a homeless man sleeps near the cars in the hospital parking lot. That's why no one noticed me when I recorded your entire conversation last night. Dr. Peterson began to back away toward the parked cars. But David continued, Doctor, you have a 16-year-old daughter at Westfield Academy, don't you? Victoria paid for her scholarship. And William, you promised the doctor that after inheriting Victoria's fortune, you would donate $2 million to cancer research at the hospital where he works. Quid pro quo. The revelations hit the crowd like shockwaves. People who had previously viewed David as mentally disturbed now watched him with a mixture of horror and fascination. You think that because I sleep on the streets, I don't listen, I don't think, I don't plan, David said, his eyes shining with an intensity that made even William recoil. But you've forgotten that I've built security systems for this family for 15 years. I know every secret, every weakness, every lie that sustains this empire. William tried one last card. Even if your accusations were true, Victoria is dead. There's no way to reverse death. David smiled for the first time since he had arrived at the cemetery. Tetrodotoxin, extracted from the puffer fish. In controlled doses, it paralyzes the nervous system, reduces the heart rate to imperceptible levels, and induces a catatonic state that perfectly simulates death. The antidote, he raised the vial, must be administered within 20 hours, or the paralysis becomes permanent. Dr. Peterson collapsed into a nearby chair, his face in his hands. My God, what have we done? The TV camera captured the exact moment when William's mask finally slipped. His expression of feigned grief turned to pure hatred, and he lunged toward David with clenched fists. You destroyed my life for 3 years, William shouted. I won't let you ruin everything now. But David didn't move. He stood there, holding the vial as if it were the most precious thing in the world, while his voice echoed across the cemetery. The difference between us, William, is that you never understood the true value of a life. But someone who has lost everything learns exactly what is worth saving. Each new humiliation William tried to inflict only strengthened something inside David that his oppressors couldn't see. A silent force fueled by the very injustice they tried to perpetuate. As if each insult was fuel for a fire that was about to consume everything they had built on lies and cruelty. The revelation about the recording hit the crowd like an earthquake. Dr. Peterson was visibly panicked, sweat dripping down his face as he tried to find a way out. William, on the other hand, forced a confident smile, as if he still believed he could control the situation. Even if you have a recording, William said, his voice regaining some of its previous arrogance. It proves absolutely nothing. Any court would dismiss evidence obtained illegally by a convicted criminal. You're nothing but a disturbed homeless man trying to blackmail a grieving family. David watched William with a calmness that made some of those present uncomfortable. It was the serenity of someone who knew every move in the game before it even began. "You're right about one thing, William," David replied, putting his smartphone back in his backpack. "A court would indeed question evidence obtained by me. That's why for the past 3 months, I haven't been the one collecting the most important evidence." A murmur of confusion swept through the crowd. Dr. Peterson raised his head, his eyes wide with terror. "Do you know Dr. Jennifer Hayes?" David asked casually. FBI forensic toxicology expert. Retired for 2 years, but still an independent consultant for special cases. From the middle of the crowd, an elegant woman in her 60s approached calmly. Her grey hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she carried a professional leather briefcase. Her presence commanded immediate respect. Even the security guards hesitated before trying to stop her. "Dr. Peterson," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a surgical blade. "How interesting to meet you here, especially considering our conversation yesterday about the effects of tetrodotoxin in sublethal doses." The doctor paled even further. "If that were possible. I don't know what you are talking about." "Oh, but you do," Dr. Hayes continued, opening her briefcase and removing a digital recorder. "Because you sought me out 3 times in the last 2 weeks, feigning academic interest in poisons that simulate death. Curious timing, considering that your most famous patient died of exactly the symptoms you were researching." William tried to intervene. "This is ridiculous. You are creating an absurd conspiracy based on solid scientific evidence." Dr. Hayes interrupted him coldly. "Mr. Washington approached me 3 months ago with a theory about tetrodotoxin poisoning. Initially, I confess I was skeptical. A homeless man claiming to know advanced chemistry seemed unlikely." David smiled discreetly. "Software engineering includes computational biochemistry, Doctor. Especially when you spend 3 years on the streets with plenty of time to study and plan." "Exactly. And when Mr. Washington showed me the recordings of the conversations he witnessed, I agreed to conduct an independent investigation," Dr. Hayes continued. "I infiltrated your social circle undercover. It wasn't difficult. Charity events, fundraising dinners. Victoria personally introduced me to both of you last month." The silence that followed was deafening. William and Dr. Peterson exchanged looks of growing panic, finally realizing that they had been observed and analyzed without their knowledge. During that time, Dr. Hayes continued methodically. "I documented multiple inconsistencies in your behavior. Dr. Peterson, you purchased pure tetrodotoxin 6 weeks ago from a questionable supplier on the dark web. And William, your online searches for accelerated inheritance and contestable wills were enlightening." David pulled a tablet out of his backpack, which no one had noticed before. 3 years sleeping on the streets teaches you to be invisible. People don't see a homeless person as a threat or a witness. You never suspected I was documenting every move, every conversation, every suspicious transaction." The images on the tablet showed William entering and leaving Dr. Peterson's office at odd hours, suspicious bank transfers, and even photos of the two meetings secretly in remote locations. "Impossible," William stammered, his composure finally crumbling. "You don't have the resources, you don't have access. The public library offers free internet for 4 hours a day," David replied calmly. "Enough for a software engineer to keep his skills sharp. And when you destroy someone's life unfairly, that person has plenty of time to plan an appropriate response." Dr. Peterson finally broke down completely. Please stop this. He threatened me, said he would destroy my career, that my daughter would lose her scholarship. I didn't want to do this. But you did, Dr. Hayes replied coldly. And now we have 47 minutes to administer the antidote before the effects become irreversible. Aunt Henderson approached the coffin, tears in her eyes. Please save my niece. If there's hope, we have to try. William made one last desperate attempt. Even if all of this is true, you can't prove she's still alive. What if you are wrong? What if you kill her trying to save her? David approached the coffin and for the first time allowed emotion to show in his voice. Victoria gave me a chance when no one else would. When I was just a young engineer from the suburbs, she saw potential where others saw only difference. For 15 years, I worked to build systems that would protect her company, her family, her life.